Okay, here we are. We're on Deer Pond right now. What we're talking about today is trees. And, with cattle ranching and wildlife, cattle and in most cases, cattle and wildlife don't mix. But you can let them mix. They eat different things, and you can let them mix. We run about 250 head of cattle, but I've designated certain areas that are primarily for wildlife and primarily for white-tailed deer. So where I put this, where I did the wildlife side on the ranch, roughly 800 acres of cover that we feed deer in, but we also let the cows travel through at certain periods of time, then put them back out into the pastures. I planted a lot of trees. So this place was set up for cattle ranch. So it's a wide open pastures, very few trees, just for shade for cattle. And that's the way it was kind of set up. Everything's mowed, kept down nice, sprayed, everything else. So there's certain areas that are wide open like this that I am designating as wildlife, that I am going back and preparing it for wildlife. So I put my food plots up on the hills, and then now I have where I found good water source and a good area where the deer want to be, I've planted trees. So planting the trees takes a lot of time. Well, this is my family land. I'm planting trees and getting ready and doing this for future generations. My boys like to hunt. By the time they get 40 years old, it'll be set up just about perfect. It'll be good anyway in the meantime, because you see the nice tall grasses, the wild grasses that have grown up. The deer love to get in those and eat. But where you see these tall grasses are trees planted. So here in this general area, I planted somewhere around 10,000 trees. There's close to 10 acres that have been planted, but the whole thing's not covered. There's just travel areas on the edges of the food plots and around in the side hills and next to the water. I've planted trees. So on our whole ranch, we planted roughly 60 acres of trees, but they're not in one continuous block. They're in travel corridors. So where I figure the deer want to travel, they're going to travel through the trees anyway. But where they most likely want to travel, around water sources, creek beds, low spots that you can't mow anyway very easily for cattle, and you want to keep cattle out of those areas, it's hard to kind of keep it clean. You might as well have trees and not plant it and waste the diesel. So travel corridors, I've made a lot of travel corridors in areas that the deer want to travel. Side hills that's hard to keep maintained from mowing, and hay meadows and pastures, things like that. Coarse ground that's just a lot of clay and other things that doesn't grow good grass, might as well have trees on them. So I've incorporated the wildlife side and the cattle. Cattle graze on the outside of the trees, and the deer are in the middle of the trees. One thing about it, on that 60 acres, I figured out real quick, it took me about a year, that I had to actually have places fenced off for the trees to grow. Because when we went in and planted, we planted small saplings, pretty short. They're 12 inches to 18 inches long. And cattle love to browse on those leaves, so they were killing the trees. So I went in and fenced my trees off to keep the cattle from killing my trees, so that they can get bigger and taller. And then one day we can either take the fences out or just leave them.